Hi, hello. Sorry, I am just checking if we are indeed live. Looks like I'm live, sounds like I'm live. So if it walks like a duck and sounds like a duck, then it must be a duck. Correct? Correct. Okay, we are live. We are live. Right. If you are with me live, give me a hashtag live in the comments. If you're catching me in replay, give me a hashtag replay in the comments. Now, if you're here for the session, this is going to be quite a big one, so I would actually urge you to grab a notepad and pen. I've booked it in for, I originally booked it in for 30 minutes, but when I was started writing my notes, I kind of went, oh, this is going to be probably about 45 minutes. If it goes on for an hour, obviously you can duck out and stuff, but it is going to be quite a big topic, and it's been one that I've been thinking about for a few weeks, and still I will be very upfront about how some of the terminology I'm still not overly comfortable with, and a couple of you did highlight that as well when I first started talking about it. And I want you to know that everything that I talk about here today is all said with love, and at times I'm struggling with some of the terminology through my notes. I'm kind of struggling with how do I term it in a way that I love and feel comfortable with, and at times there's just no other way of saying how it is. So it's all said with love. It is not specific to any individual. I want you to know that this has been a topic I've been thinking about, as I've said, for months. And it's a combination of multiple clients, multiple people I've spoken to the phone, people I've experienced in real life, my own feelings, and my own examples of when I have demonstrated some of the behaviours that I might talk about. So, there's 3 goals I have for this session. One is to get this bloody hangnail off. Why does that happen? So bloody annoying. So annoying. So I've got 3 goals. One is to understand the various thought processes and mindset funks that we see from all our clients in various forms. Not every single client, that's probably a little bit unfair, but a lot just over the years. Goal number 2, I want to be able to help everyone identify their own triggers, because we all have our own triggers of anything. And number 3, how to all help ourselves be different, better, happier. That's all. So first, the main thing I really want to share with you is what I'm talking about today is not to be used for any form of diagnosis of any form of anything. That's not what I'm here for. I'm not qualified for that. A lot of the terminology used, as I say, makes me feel a little bit uncomfortable, and I want it to be used in the loosest possible sense, if that makes sense. And I want us to all understand as well that everything that I'm talking about, if you think about, let's think about good foods and bad foods as the example for this, right? So people have this opinion that there's good foods and there are bad foods, and they're in buckets. They're in different buckets, but it's not. It's a spectrum. So some foods are healthier than others. Some foods are unhealthier, and that's what everybody is on. So this kind of spectrum that I'm going to be talking about, and some may feel more along this end. You can't see me. Why is the line? Anyway, some may be here, some may be here, some may be in the middle. Some feel more of a connection to this side and to this side, and whatnot. So it's not with anything to do with people. This is not black and white. Everybody has various forms of grey and shades of grey. Sorry, I am definitely live here. So yeah, okay. So I want you to sit, I want you to listen, I want you to be open, I want you to take notes, and I want you to recognize any of your own behaviors, any of your own patterns, and go, okay, is this an issue for me? Yes, okay, I'm going to make some steps to change it, and hopefully some of the things we're going to talk about is going to change it. And it might well mean that there's some hard questions. It might well mean that there's going to be some, difficult vulnerabilities, and that's okay. Because being open to change, which you all are because you're all here, being open to change is the first step to success. And that's vulnerability. Being open to doing things different is vulnerability. Okay. So when we're talking about the things that we're talking about today, so this is all mindset that we're talking about today. And what we find with a lot of our clients is the goal is weight loss. The goal is actually, I want to feel better. I want to look better. I want to look at myself in the mirror and like what I see. I don't want to have to be shameful, etc., etc. So that's the primary goal while people are here. And we can do that. If you just follow the steps, absolutely you will do that. But for a lot of people, there's a lot of emotional baggage when it comes to dieting, when it comes to esteem, when it comes to confidence. A lot of people have come through various traumas. There's a lot, okay? And in those instances, that's where we have to dial into the mindset work and the emotional work to be able to get that long-term permanent success. And when it comes to the emotional side, that plays such a huge part in why people are here in the first place. So for many people, the overeating can come with the emotional side as well. So if you think about, for a lot, not for everybody, but for a lot of people, dealing with negative emotions can be the trigger, or avoiding negative emotions can be the trigger to overeat. Because I don't want to have to deal with that, so I'll go and get the comfort there elsewhere. For some people, it could be a person as a trigger, and it's the emotional reaction to the person rather than the actual emotion in itself or the memory or whatever. And one of the big challenges we see is that we batter ourselves, for want of a better word. We actually just beat ourselves up so much with the whole, what is wrong with me? Why can't I control myself? I'm such a bad person for doing this. I obviously don't want it enough. So in actual fact, this is where the title of this came from, is we are being the villain to ourselves, but then we're also being a victim of that villain. So it's almost like having this split personality of, I don't deserve to be thin because I can't control myself and I'm such a bad person for doing this. And then you've got the other side going, but it's not my fault because this other part of my personality here is driving these behaviors. And if you think about how the mind works, it's hugely powerful. We're actually we're giving ourselves double negatives. And it's mental, absolutely mental. Okay, but it doesn't mean, none of this is bad. This is just life. This is just what happens with some people. And if we are willing to be truly vulnerable, so being vulnerable means when we are being open without defenses, like when we are truly open to receive any emotion, any feedback, any criticism, we don't that eventually those types of behaviors will peter out, because if we're becoming vulnerable and going, okay, I'm going to be truly open with whatever that negative emotion is that is making me overeat, or whatever that person is that's making me overeat, then eventually over time we're becoming accepting, we're becoming vulnerable, and then we don't need, because we'll be tackling the actual root of the problem, then we don't need to then ultimately become victims to our own villains. Okay, does that make sense? Give me a wee check in the chat if it's. So when we can identify the root cause, that means we can then backpedal and backtrack the whole thought process from what is the negative emotion to what is the pattern to ultimately putting the food in our mouth. And then we can start working on all of those. So one of the big things that we'll talk about in your program is pattern interruption. So we all have patterns, we all have habits, we all have ways of doing things that result in an outcome. So I talk about the Friday night wine time as being quite a common pattern. We come in from work, we take a bra off, we get a wine with dinner, we start making dinner, or we phone a takeaway, drinking wine, and then before you know it, you've tanned a bottle and a half of wine, family pack of kettle chips, and a family pack of Maltesers, right? It's a huge, it might not be those exact things, but it's a common pattern. But that is now habitual. That is part and parcel of who we are. But if we can interrupt that pattern somewhere and go, right, well, I'm not going to come in and take off my bra, I'm going to come in and change my shoes and take the dog a walk. That's just breaking the pattern further back. So rather than coming in, taking your bra off, and going, no, I'm not having the wine, but you still do everything else, there's so much connection to that wine at that time that it's going to be really, really difficult to just use willpower to fight against it. So we need to break the pattern. Another example of the pattern could be with when the trigger can be a person. So one example, which is really goes back a couple of years, is a client of ours went into this pattern of binge eating, and she couldn't overcome it, and we tried all the pattern interrupts, and we tried looking at what was happening, and we eventually determined, after doing daily diaries, that it was every time she spoke to her mum, and there was all these emotions and connections and behaviours that were associated with the relationship with her mum, and that's what was causing her overeating. And it always happened when it was she spoke to her mum in her evening. Now, we're not going to say, oh, you need to stop talking to your mother. That's not realistic at all. But I was like, okay, how do we change this then? So you've got more control. You have got more control over your emotions. Do we change your phone calls with your mum to daytimes only, so that the other patterns are no longer there for the evening? And that's what ultimately changed that, was going, okay, right, I'm now open to the fact that that is the trigger. And I obviously need to work on that relationship, or work on finding out what it is about that relationship that is causing these negative emotions. And then we change the pattern. We only speak to mother in the morning. We have more then resistance to the, oh my fucking God. And I think we've probably all had that time at some point with our mothers, oh my God. So they're just some examples. So if we can find the cause, if we can find the trigger, then it means that we can work on what the process is leading up to that, and we can change that through pattern interruption. But if we are not open to being vulnerable to that emotion, to that person, to that challenge, to that barrier, then we're really, really going to struggle. And that's where we might see language such as blaming the externals. So not blaming us, blaming the externals. You might be blaming, oh my God, Emma and Clara don't know what they're talking about. I've had no results. Or, oh my God, my husband keeps bringing home takeaways. Or, oh my God, my sister came round with a cake. And, oh my God, this healthy thing isn't actually that healthy. Or, all the external things. We're not actually taking any responsibility. It's everything else that is the problem. And that's where we become victimized. That's where we become, it's everything else that is the problem, and there is no responsibility on ourselves. We're not taking any responsibility for the actions that we do, because ultimately the action of eating is on us. Yes, there can be many, many external sources that can come out and sideswipe us. So this is where we want to think about, am I being a victim to all these external things? Am I being the villain? Am I being the perpetrator, which many of us do? And that's why that vulnerability aspect is so important, to go, okay, right, there's a pattern here. I'm being a dick to myself, and by saying it's all my fault, I'm a terrible person, I don't deserve this, what's wrong with me, I am broken. So we're beating ourselves up. But then on the flip side, we're beating ourselves up by going, yeah, but hubby bought home the takeaway, or I had to go out and do this, and so bought me a cake, and then they bought all these extremely chocolatey mini bites to the office, etc., etc. So there's being the villain, the perpetrator, and there's being the victim. And And that's really not a long-term solution. It's really, really just going to be, it's just going to be a pattern. It's just going to be a pattern. Okay. So if you've thought like the villain, if you've thought like that perpetrator and going, I am broken, there's something wrong with me, my metabolism is all screwed up and blah, 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 I'm just never going to lose weight. That's where we need to start thinking, going back to those limiting beliefs about, well, is this really true? And chances are it's not true. It's very, very, very rare for somebody to have a metabolic condition that stops them from losing weight. It is nigh on, like, science doesn't lie. Science doesn't lie. And I want you to think about, are these things that I'm saying really, really, really true? Or is this something that I'm just believing to be true to make this easier on me? And I'm not truly open to being vulnerable and looking at my own behaviors and my own actions. And one of the things that we see when we have this, oh, there's something wrong with me, I am broken, I can't lose weight, my metabolism is all messed up, it's all that, woe is me, I'm not good enough. Ultimately, that's what it comes down to. Esteem, it comes down to identity, and a lot of what we do is around identity, as you know. I think everybody will know that by now, yes. So am I not good enough? There's something wrong with me? That's quite looking at you as the victim. If we switch it to being vulnerable, now, by the very fact of your existence, the fact that you are here on this beautiful earth means that you are enough. You are enough. You are worthy. You deserve everything that you desire because you as an entity are here on the planet and you are enough. You're enough. And that's where this vulnerability comes in, going, I am good enough. That's one of the first building blocks of esteem. I am good enough. I deserve everything that I set myself out for. I deserve this goal. I deserve this. I deserve that. I deserve anything that you deserve. Anything that you think of that you want, you deserve because you are enough. You are enough. And that's where we have to start thinking about when those little I'm not good enough or I am broken, that's when we have to start challenging that thought process and go, you know that thing that I always recommend that you do, you shake your head out? No, that's not true. That's not true. And it's only by that repetition, that repetitive behaviour of, no, that's not true. You are enough. You are here. You're enough. You are worthy. And so are your goals. So only by that nature of repetitiveness, that will eventually, that type of language of I'm not good enough will go. Okay. So I want you to start doing that. If you start feeling or hearing the negativity in your voice or your thoughts of, I'm broken, I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy, I want you to physically shake your head. And if you can, say out loud, you go, no, that's not true. That's not true. I am. And if you need to, if you've ever done Sharon's yoga, one of her affirmations is, I am, enter your own word here, I am enough. I am strong. I am powerful. I am worthy. I am confident. I am loved. Whatever word that helps you, use it. And you might need to stick post-it notes in places. You might need to write in your mirror with lipstick, slightly looking like there's a murderer entered your house right enough. But you get to decide that, and that's hugely powerful. Hugely powerful. So use your strengths to escape those victim type words of I am broken, I'm not good enough, I can't do this, this doesn't work, shake out and go, yeah, it does. And I am worthy, I am enough. Whatever your affirmation you need to do, use it. And that will help you overcome some of that negative language that we're using with ourselves. So being vulnerable to the fact that I am enough, that's good. Being open to changing your own mind and your own belief about yourself. Okay. And remember, so going back to the negative emotions, which is where a lot of the triggers come from. It might be scary, it might feel scary, but I want you to think about being open and being vulnerable to feeling anything negative or positive puts you in a place of strength. And having the fear, feeling scary, isn't the fact that it is scary, it's just that you don't want to feel it, if that makes sense. And if you're willing to feel the fear, and this is something that Helen talks about, if you're willing to feel the fear and you're willing to hear the feedback and you're willing to deal with any emotion, that automatically puts you at an advantage where you've never been before. Think about how empowering that is. That is your strength. The fact that you are willing to go, okay, that I've never been willing to deal with this. This feels scary, but I am open to dealing with that. I am open to changing that. That automatically puts you from here to here, just by that decision. And that's where your inner strength is growing. That's the openness and the vulnerability. And that's hugely powerful. So use it. You've got so much strength that you don't even know. So use it. And that's where you're going to start overcoming the woe is me and all these things are against me, to going, okay, well, I'm open to dealing with this, this, and this. Bring it on. Yeah, it's scary, but I'm willing to feel that fear. And all this internal work is what gets the physical outputs of the body change, because you're fundamentally changing the root cause and the actions behind it. Okay. So one of the things that I wanted to talk about that was in relation to this kind of victim language is, for those of you that have done the mindset stuff at the very, very beginning of when you sign up, about, you know, what is a growth mindset versus what is a fixed mindset. And there's a lot of similarities between using the language that people might refer to as victim mentality, victim mindset, as a fixed mindset, about how, you know, bad things happen and will keep happening, and I've got no control over that, and I might fail, so there's no point in trying, and other circumstances or other people are to blame. There is a direct link. And when I talked at the beginning of this about how I don't like some of the language used, I don't like using the word victim as such, because it's got such negative connotations, and it's not, I don't even believe it's a diagnosed medical term, but it's ill used. I think it's ill used. But fixed mindset puts a different slant on it, because it actually, you know, it's a scale of, you know, a fixed mindset through to a growth mindset. I want that to be the different way. And in some instances, you might feel a little bit more fixed about going, well, I've got no experience other than this, so why would it be this? So it's important to realize that, you know, there is a time and a place for negativity. Absolutely. You know, who goes through life buzzing with positivity all the time and thinking, you know, being hopeful all the time? I don't think it's possible. Maybe if you're Tony Robbins, he seems supremely positive all the time. But everybody is on a scale. I would suggest that everybody is on a scale. And there is a direct correlation between negativity and a fixed mindset and victim type behaviour, victim type language. Like, it's everybody else's fault. It's everything else that's going on's fault. It's not my fault. But we have to recognise that there are times where shit happens because of another person or because of an external circumstance. So if you ever do feel like, you know, something bad has happened because of somebody else, because of something else, you're not being a victim and you're not being negative by saying that. But if that's only what happens, or only what we're seeing, and we're not doing anything about it to try and pull ourselves out, then that's where it becomes more of the fixed mindset and more of the victim type language. Okay, so we have to remember that common sense has to play a part. But one of the big things I see around, you know, this fixed mindset versus growth language that might be negative is where there's one of the big thing is there's no accountability, there's no responsibility on the individual. Like, it's always somebody else's fault. It's always the fact that it's raining, or it's, oh, I couldn't do it because it was raining, or, oh, I didn't meet my calories this week because my hubby bought home 2 takeaways, or I've met all my goals, but actually I ate a family pack of Kit Kats. Don't even know if you get family pack of Kit Kats. Because they were in the cupboard or whatever. You know, it's something, there's the lack of responsibility is where the big warning sign comes up. And as I said, you know, bad things really do happen, and bad things happen to people that don't deserve it. Absolutely. That goes down a whole other trap. And shit does happen. And at times when shit happens repeatedly to the same individual, it can, you know, you will all have had times in our life where it's just one shitty thing after the next going, oh my fucking God, what is going on here? And it's understandable at times that you do feel like, oh my God, the world is out to get me. And we've all had circumstances like that in our life. We absolutely have. And we have to look at everything and go, okay, where do I take the positive? Where do I see, where can I make change? Like an example of this is, you know, getting made redundant. It was like, from a personal point of view, I kind of knew it was coming. I had options within the organisation with jobs and whatnot, but none of them really got me excited. I mean, can you imagine me being a head of performance pricing or whatever the hell? Oh, Jesus Christ, no. Ugh, awful job title, an awful job. But being made redundant was like my world crumbled, and there was all these other stuff that was happening. Like my marriage wasn't doing particularly well, and it was just like, oh my God, like boom, 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 boom. And yeah, the absolute positive was, well, this means that I can go and take that redundancy money and go and buy that house that's got a massive garage and set up my own personal training business and do all these qualifications. But you don't think that at the time, do you? You know, you don't think that. And that was one of the big learnings for me, was coming through the other side of going, oh my God, my life couldn't be any better. Like, if I didn't do this and I had gone for that head of performance planning, Sarah, who worked at 3, is that the job title? I can't remember. Like, what would I be doing? I'd be travelling up and down to Maidenhead every single week on a 5:00, 5:30 flight, and never seeing my family. Yeah, I could be having fun in the pub and da, 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 da. That's really not the way when I live my life. But anyway, so we can have all these things that feel like life is out to get us. But when we start taking responsibility for our own emotions behind that and our own actions, then we can actually start turning negative things into positive things with a little bit of skills. Like actually actively looking for, well, this means that maybe this could actually happen and that would be pretty cool. And that's where we start seeing that kind of more growth mindset, growth orientation. And that's really, really powerful. So yeah. So if you ever start like recognizing this whole, it's not my fault, so and so's fault, this is their fault. The action here is recognize that it's happening and look and go, okay, is there anything here that I should be responsible for? Is there anything here that I should take accountability of? Another one around that whole redundancy period at my work was, there was a couple of individuals that were fairly close to me in terms of like friendship group, who they didn't have the option of applying for other jobs. They were just marked as, you're getting made redundant. And that is a clear signal of, you've not been very good in your job, or we don't, culturally, we don't want you. And there was a couple of people like, oh, that's so unfair, blah, 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 blah. And you're like, okay, but when you look at the situation, you've spent the last 2 years dossing about, your performance has been utterly shit. You know, it's not your fault that you've been made redundant because there's a structure change, but the fact that you have not performed and pulled your socks up actually does mean that there is some accountability there. So yeah, not taking responsibility is one. Not digging. Another one is around solutionizing or not solutionizing. Now, as a project manager, ex-project manager, I tend to always try and find a solution in everything. Like, and I'll always go, right, so that's your problem. Right, well, why don't you do this? And that's the wrong thing to do, right? But what is also wrong is to not ever try and find a solution. So we know that not all negative situations are uncontrollable. We know that shit happens to everybody. But at first it might always feel like there's nothing that can be done. Nothing I can do here. When we apply that to weight loss, I've spent the last 2 days eating my way through Greggs. We'll use Greggs as an example. Spend the last 2 days eating myself through Greggs. There's nothing to be done for me, so I'm just going to have another day of eating my way through Greggs. Okay, so that is showing that there is no to little interest about making positive changes to overcome the historical issue, that situation of 2 days of eating through Greggs. And if you, like, you might even have had this, partners are quite bad for this. So say you've had 2 days of eating shit and you're like, oh my God, I feel awful. I'm meant to be trying to lose weight. I'm meant to be trying to do this and this and this. And I've just done this. But you continue the pattern. Somebody might pull you up on that and say, well, you know, if you don't want to continue, you're going to have to change it. Why don't you go and have a salad or something? But you often get that, just fuck off. You don't know what you're talking about. I'll do what I want. That's a big one for our clients. I'll do what I want. I can do it myself. That's because we're all control freaks. But anyway, so rejecting offers of help or rejecting other people's best interest, and that's a very fine line as well. Is it your best interest or is it their best interest? But anyway, by not changing the situation where you can change the situation, that's a challenge. You know, that's where you have to ask yourself the hard questions and go, I've got the control here. I have control to change this pattern. What am I avoiding by not changing it? Why is it so scary to try and change it? And that's where you have to go back to that vulnerability piece and go, okay, am I willing to deal with any emotion, any feeling here in order to overcome this? So if we're not actively looking for solutions to a problem and we're spending too much time wallowing, that's a good word. I've got a good tip for you. Okay, so here's a good tip. Now, this can be, right, so we're talking about like language, victim mindset, negative language, etc., etc. And we know that bad things happen. And we know that things are going to piss us off. And we know that we've got choices. We've got choices to let it consume us and set us down a further path of negative behaviours or actions. Or we can change it and take another course of positivity and positive actions, right? But there's that bit in between where by our own nature, we might want to spend some time in self-pity, and that's okay. I want you to give yourself permission, but I want you to put a boundary around it. So one of the things that I do when things don't go my way, which is frequently, like I am a complete control freak. I absolutely am. But when things don't go my way, or I have been on a strict calorie deficit and I then end up drinking a bottle of wine, which does happen, instead of, oh, woe is me, this is bad, what I do is I set a timer for 5 minutes and I go into a room and I fucking, why are you such a dick game? And I get it all out and I get really angry. And this applies to if somebody's pissed you off. And I get really angry and I stamp my feet and punch a pillow and I go, and I swear and I do all the things. But see, when that timer goes off and it's 5 minutes over, it's done. It is absolutely done. Because I am not allowing negativity into my head where it can bubble and breed and then poison other parts of me. No way. No way. So I want you to start thinking about the same. And you can do this, like say you've got a shit situation at work. Your boss has been a bell end, or your team's been an arse, or even your children are being, husband's been an arse, wife's been an arse, dog's been a dick, whatever it is that is making you feel resentment or rage or pity or whatever it is, just grab the time. Like if you're somebody that normally needs a couple of days to wallow and get it out of your system, then like 5 minutes is probably not realistic for you. Take half an hour, but make it a good solid half an hour of getting it all out. Journal it if you need to, stamp your foot, throw things at a wall, whatever it is. But the minute that that timer goes off, it is done. You are over it and you move forward. And then when you do that, you just physically, there's a lot to be said about this physical response of just shaking things off. You go, no, no more. That's not me. That's not how I do it. So the 5 minute rule. And it's really powerful to do that. So we've covered lack of responsibility, not looking for a solution. I want to talk about the sense of powerlessness. Is that right? Powerlessness. Now, one of the things when we get so caught up in the negativity, when we get so caught up in this whole, well, nothing's going to change, so why even bother? It can be around this, well, I lack the power to make changes. I don't believe I can make changes. I'm not strong enough, etc., etc. And that's where we start waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting. Now, this is where you guys are probably ahead of the curve because you're here in this group because you have made a decision. You have made a decision that, you know, you're not waiting. Now is the right time. Now is the right place. I'm doing it. Okay, so we have to use that momentum. And do I like feeling this way? Do I like feeling like I've got no power? No. Most people would say no to that question. So you get to choose. You get to use that strength of vulnerability again and go, okay, am I open to feeling a different way? Yes, I am. So let's practice that. So that might mean having to look at our own language, our own words that we use, tone that we use, not just to others, but to, well, mainly to about ourselves actually, because typically what we find is when we are being the victim or the villain in our own lives, we're normally very positive outwardly. We're normally very giving and very, you know, motivational to other people, but it's that internal, you know, everything bad happens to me, I can't do anything myself, so why even bother? I don't deserve to feel good, no one cares, blah, 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 blah. All this type of negative language that we use in ourselves, the more we use it, the more powerful it gets. So the only way to change it is to break it. And the minute something like that happens internally, going, oh, everything bad happens, so why even change it? We need to actually actively change it. And again, you have the power and you have the control. And going, okay, so is this really true? No, it's not, because bad things happen to other people as well. And also good things happen to other people, so they should also happen to me. I need to allow that to happen, because all this negative self-talk all the time is going to damage, it is physically eroding away at your esteem. And then that makes it harder to bounce back from challenges, and then you just end up stuck in this place of negativity, and it's even harder and harder to get out of the hole. And we know science and research tells us, and a lot of you will recognize this, the higher instances of negative self-talk, the higher instances of sabotage, self-sabotage. More negative you are to yourself, you will self-sabotage. And it's a vicious circle, because the more you self-sabotage, the more you blame yourself, and the more the negative self-talk will happen. So in order, we need to break that loop. And in order to break that loop, we need to start counterbalancing that negative self-talk with positive self-talk. So whether that is affirmations, whether that is I am enough, I can do this, I am enough, I believe, I am positive, I am healthy, I am happy, I have confidence. And there's a whole, I watched this TED Talk years ago, and I still go back to it probably once a year, and it's called Fake It Till You Are It. It's not Fake It Till You Make It, it's Fake It Till You Are It. And it's by a lady called Amy Cundy, and you can find it on YouTube. And it's really, really powerful. And it's been discredited, and then it's been recredited as, you know, this doesn't work and this does work. But even when it was discredited, I firmly believe it works, because the more you say and believe, the more it becomes your reality. What we choose to focus on becomes our reality. So if you are spending all your life talking about yourself negatively, I can't do this, I'm rubbish, this doesn't work, blah, 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 you're going to believe that because that's what you're talking about. But if you change it and go, oh, I'm beautiful, I love myself, people fancy me, I am enough, I am strong, I'm powerful, I'm confident. You say it enough, you'll begin to believe that too. And at first you'll feel like an absolute bellend for saying it, but do it. Affirmations are so, so, so powerful, whether they're spoken, written, read. Honestly, just give it a try. Give it a try. Because if we can more reinforce the positive, if we can reinforce the vulnerability, then you're on the path to success. And that's going to help reduce that sabotage. It's going to help reduce the negative self-talk. Okay. And all of this combined links into self-confidence. So as our self-confidence lowers, the more negativity happens, the more victim-type language comes in. And it can make everything feel worse. So things like, I'm not clever enough to get a promotion, I'm not good enough, I'm not part of the in crowd, blah, 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 blah. These are all things that people have said. I've said them myself. And that fundamentally is long-term going to stop you getting what you want because you're putting the blockers in before you've even tried. And it's quite interesting around job applications that I can't remember the actual stats, but I genuinely can't remember the stats. But if there's a job advert that goes out and it has your essential criteria and your desirable criteria, if women don't hit all of the things, they won't apply for the job. They'll just put themselves out there. I don't have that, so I'm not even going to apply. But men, if they only have 50% of the criteria, they'll still apply for the job. They will still apply for the job. And somebody without the criteria will get the job because they've put themselves out. But when the other stat is really powerful, and again, I can't remember it, but when women go for jobs, they are like 50% more likely to get a job than a guy is through the interview process. So in actual fact, we are literally shooting ourselves in the feet by believing we are not good enough to do something without even trying. Okay, that was a kind of tenuous link there, but hopefully you'll get my gist. So when you try to work towards what you want, that's you starting to knock aside those feelings of I'm a victim of consequences or circumstances. And that means that we're misting over the negativity lens. Misting over. So we need to look at all areas of our life. You know, it's not just about body confidence. It's about our own overall sense of confidence and esteem. And one of the other things that is really common, especially in this group, is there's a lot of women that have, really fantastic careers, but their lack of self-belief in themselves is absolutely shocking. So it's almost like they have compartmentalized themselves into like, I am really good at this job, but I'm rubbish at everything else. I'm rubbish at relationships, I'm rubbish at fat loss, I'm rubbish at da da da. But in actual fact, if we can then raise those feelings of esteem and confidence in these other areas, it's going to raise the levels of what you can do in career. So instead of being like a head of something or a director, it could be on board of directors, it could be the next step up because you're elevating your standards across the board. You're increasing your levels of confidence in every area of your life, not just in body. So that's an interesting take as well. So we've got to remember that for many, the feelings of negativity, the feelings of fixed mindset, the feeling of being a victim doesn't just happen. You don't just wake up one morning and go, life's out to get me. It's shit. Nothing I do works. I'm a miserable cow. I feel hopeless that nothing I do works. Because all of these feelings can actually lead to mental health issues like depression and anxiety and etc. etc. So we have to consider there might have always been a path to this point, and it could be elements of trauma, post-traumatic stress. There's 101 different reasons why people could be living with this type of mindset. And if that is you, that you have experienced trauma or unresolved issues or breakups, grief, there's 101. And if you identify that is one of the triggers, then it might be worth actually seeking out counselling or professional support in that area, like genuinely. And I think Helen can definitely Helen or Clara can definitely point in the right direction. But at the very, very least, you should be referring back to some of the sessions that Helen has done, because that's where her qualifications and skills lie. Okay. So the other thing that I want to look at, and I am completely going to go over the 45-minute mark, I do apologise. The other thing that I want to touch on here is, because most of us here are control freaks, and probably that term shouldn't be used either, but it is what it is. We tend to have this almost martyr-like complex. So this, again, not everybody's going to recognise this, and that is fine. But a lot of us have this kind of feeling of, I must do everything for everybody and I must be invaluable to everybody else, to the detriment of ourselves. And I know that many women go through this because they are juggling multiple plates. Their mums, their wives, their bosses, their daughters of aging parents, family, ill health in the family, PTA, chairman of the board, I don't know, what other voluntary things. Karen Hedge, she's in the Coast Guard and now she's signed up to ice skating. But, like, that's manageable for Karen Hedge. But if it's at the detriment to our own success, we have to look at what's going on. We have to look at, are you doing these things but feel unappreciated? Are you doing these things to help you feel better? Are you doing all these things but yet you feel all these people make you feel bad about yourself? We've got to look at that. We've got to look at, is there any toxic relationships here? Are you doing these things because of an uncontrollable urge to help people? Are you doing these things because you feel guilty if you don't do them? And that's where you have to look at boundaries and going, okay, right, I have to put me first. And this is 9 times out of 10, that's a goal. When I talk to women, I need to put myself first. But I would say out of those 9, only 5 are actually willing to do something about that. It's a nice thing to say, yeah, I need to put myself first. But actually, faced with right, okay, well, let's put you first. Oh, no, well, I can't because there's always something else. So putting yourself first actually does mean putting yourself first. But if you're running about after, like, I'm not talking about taking your kids to rugby or their clubs or taking your hubby to the train once a week, whatever. I'm talking about where you are doing other people's laundry and cooking and looking after everybody else's kids and, I don't know, just being the one that everybody goes to volunteer them. That's a different kettle of fish. So yeah, think about where your time is spent, if it's not being spent on you, and what can change. What boundaries do you need to set with other people? And it's really hard to do that, saying, no, I'm sorry, Alison, I can no longer take your kids after school 5 times a week and take them to McDonald's and take them swimming and And you don't even have to explain yourself. You just like, no, I can't do it any longer. We spend so long explaining why we can't do things, and it's actually nobody else's business but our own. So yeah, boundaries, hugely important, because it puts a strain on you, but it also puts a strain on your relationships as well. Like, if you are doing stuff for other people all the time, you're going to end up feeling resentful. You're going to end up feeling dissatisfied. You're going to end up feeling like it could be you're doing too much at work. You're doing everything for everybody at work. You're going to end up feeling completely resentful of your career, your boss, the team, whatever it is. And that's not a healthy place to be anyway. But they also it leads to burnout. And many of you have experienced times of burnout where you've just cannot do anymore. You have given everything that you've got to everything and everybody else, and you have nothing left in the tank. Nothing left. So be very mindful of this. I don't want martyr complex. It sounds terrible, doesn't it? But this type of behaviour, it is very common. And that then can link back into that whole fixed mindset, negative language, victim language, because it's everybody else's fault but yours. But if you're doing so much for everybody else, there is a responsibility on you there to change that. So all links in together. All links in together. So I've completely gone over this. So let's talk about things, how we can change things. If you feeling hurt, upset, pissed off at the world, angry from time to time, that's quite healthy. You know, that's where you can apply the 5-minute rule of going into a room and punching a pillow or whatever it is that you need to do. Stamping wells, I don't know, stamping your feet. You know, that's pretty healthy. It means you've got a release. It means you're feeling the emotions that you need to feel. But if it's a permanent thing where it's a victim of circumstances and external things, and the world is so unfair and woe is me, etc., then we need to do some inner work on that and going, okay, is there something that I'm avoiding dealing with here? That's where having an open and honest conversation with your coach, or being open in the group, or even getting external support, form of counselling, therapy, etc., it can be really, really help. Because we also have to consider, you know, this persistent feeling of, you know, I can't do anything right, I can't change, I'm broken. That can ultimately really damage your mental health. It can really damage your relationships. It can really damage, you know, your long-term success. So let's change it. Let's change it. So it is completely possible to change. We know that we've got hundreds and thousands of examples where people have gone from going, oh my God, I totally recognise this in myself. Oh my God, I used to be like that and now I'm not like that anymore. So it can be changed. It can be changed. And it's not, if you're open to being vulnerable with emotions and digging deeper, then it's actually can be a lot easier than you might think that it might first appear. So yeah, work on communication, work on boundaries, work on belief, work on the physical response to negative language, shake it out. Focus on the beliefs that you have, going, is that actually true? Probably not. And work on changing these kind of things. One of the when I was researching this, one of the big things that came up, which made me laugh quite a lot because it's something that we like to talk about as well, is about proper self-care. Not, you know, diving deep into the chocolate bag and not downing your sorrows in wine, but actually making sure that you're treating your body and mind with love, giving it what it needs to thrive, to be healthy. And that might mean more sleep. That might mean eating more fruit and veg. That might mean ditching alcohol for a bit. That might mean exercising. That might mean making time for relaxation, making time for affirmations, making time for journaling, making time for the inner work, and paying attention to your emotions. Actually paying attention, because if for a lot of what I've talked about, it's not happened in the last week, it's not happened in the last month. Chances are everything has been because of what's happened in the last years. So yeah, paying attention to all these kind of things will really help in the long run. All right. So I hope that all made sense. If you do have any questions, please reach out. I'm going to get this recorded on YouTube so that on the replay you can speed it up. Because if you speed me up to 1.5 speed, it becomes quite hard to understand what a Scottish person is saying. But it will give you you can zoom through the bits that you want. Okay, right, thank you for letting me spend nearly an hour today on this topic. It means a lot to me, this topic, and I hope that it helps somebody today. All right, I will speak to you all soon.